Chicago's skyline shimmered in the heat of early summer, but beneath the city's polished exterior lay countless forgotten relics, sealed buildings, decommissioned labs, and projects that once shaped the future but were now buried beneath concrete and time. Most people didn't even know they existed. But Ethan Cross wasn't most people. At 24, Ethan wasn't your typical systems engineer. He was brilliant, obsessed with technology, and constantly frustrated by the dull, underpaid maintenance work he was assigned. While others clocked in and out without thinking twice, Ethan always searched for something more. Something hidden. Something big. So, when a low-priority contract landed on his desk to assess the power grid stability of an old government research site, Ecotech Lab, he knew instantly this was no ordinary assignment. Ecotech had been shut down 2 decades ago after a mysterious fire and a classified investigation. The official reports claimed that most of the technology inside was either destroyed or relocated. But rumors online, buried in conspiracy forums and data dumps, suggested otherwise. Ethan had read every post. He'd studied every leak diagram. And now, he was being handed the keys to the ruins. The facility sat on the outskirts of the city, hidden behind a wall of twisted vines and rusting gates. Ethan arrived just after dawn, wearing a utility vest packed with sensors, tools, and a custom-built EM field scanner slung over his shoulder. The inside was exactly as expected: charred walls, shattered glass, and the faint stench of chemical residue that still lingered in the air. But as he ventured deeper into the labyrinth of corridors, he noticed something strange. Despite the visible destruction, several lower-level server units were still intact, protected by scorched but sealed biometric panels. One panel in particular caught his attention. It was labeled simply, Core A. The biometric reader was long dead, but the lock itself showed no sign of forced entry. It was untouched. Ethan set up his portable power cell, attaching it to the input node. Lights flickered, and a faint hum echoed through the walls. The door clicked, then slid open with a low, metallic groan. Dust poured out as the vacuum seal broke. Inside, 3 server towers stood upright, protected by an isolated, hardened shell. A miracle, he thought. He moved quickly, connecting his laptop and initializing a custom decryption tool. Most of the files were corrupted, data lost to time. But after 2 hours of digging, one file stood out, a black box archive titled Phase 0 Echo Ghost. As he began decrypting the contents, Ethan's pulse quickened. The file wasn't just military grade, it was beyond anything he'd seen in modern cybersecurity. It outlined a prototype system designed to eliminate all digital traces from any network, camera, or biometric database. It wasn't cloaking technology, it was complete erasure. The system rerouted signals, disguised identities, and fed false data to surveillance systems in real time. Whoever used Echo Ghost, according to the documentation, would become a digital ghost. Untraceable. Undetectable. It was the ultimate counterintelligence weapon, something that could cripple global systems if unleashed. And it had been buried and forgotten. Ethan copied the file onto a secure drive, disguising it under layers of decoy data and fragmented code. He didn't report it. He didn't tell his supervisor. He didn't even consider turning it over. He knew what he had found. This wasn't just a relic. It was power. And for the first time in his life, he had a tool that could truly change everything. The days that followed blurred together. Ethan became consumed. He barely ate, barely slept. His apartment transformed into a digital lab, walls covered in notes, blueprints, and diagrams. He rebuilt EchoGhost from the ground up, line by line, adapting it to modern networks using parts scavenged from military surplus stores and the dark web. He even tested early versions of the program on public CCTV systems, watching his image vanish from live feeds and playback records. It worked. No one saw him. But Ethan didn't just want to disappear. He wanted to test the full strength of EchoGhost in a real scenario, a challenge worthy of its power. His target, Quantum Central Bank. Quantum Central was unlike any other financial institution in the country. Its vaults weren't protected by old-school keys or passwords. They were secured with quantum encryption, retina scans, pulse analysis, and AI-powered motion tracking. The place was considered impenetrable even by black hat syndicates. But to Ethan it was perfect. If Echo Ghost could break into Quantum Central and walk away clean, he wouldn't just be rich, he'd be untouchable. He began planning every detail: employee schedules, floor layouts, sensor ranges, emergency protocols. He posed as a cleaning subcontractor and infiltrated the bank's maintenance team for 2 weeks, collecting data, lifting fingerprints, mapping routines. Every second inside was a risk, but also a revelation. He learned that most of the vault's security depended on a single biometric supervisor, and that person's schedule never changed. Ethan built a flexible polymer mask that mimicked the supervisor's facial structure. He cloned voice samples and simulated a perfect heartbeat profile using a wearable device that mimicked vascular rhythms. Nothing was left to chance. But while Ethan perfected his plan, he didn't notice the anomaly. Thousands of miles away, in a hidden government monitoring station, a system pinged for the first time in 20 years. Someone had accessed Echo Ghost. In a cold room filled with monitors, a tall man in a charcoal gray suit stared at the data stream. His name was Director Caleb Mercer. He ran the National Covert Tech Division, a branch so deep in the intelligence community that even most senators didn't know it existed. He leaned forward, watching as Ethan's digital traces vanished one by one. "Activate passive surveillance," he ordered. "Find out who woke up the ghost." His assistant looked confused. "You said that project was destroyed." Mercer narrowed his eyes. "So did the people who buried it. And they were wrong." Midnight in downtown Chicago was quieter than usual. The streets were washed in neon, the hum of the city reduced to a distant murmur. Ethan Cross stood on the rooftop of an adjacent building, his eyes locked onto the massive glass facade of the Quantum Central Bank. From this height, it looked invincible, sealed behind biometric barriers and quantum-locked protocols. But Ethan wasn't intimidated. He wasn't even nervous. Wearing a tailored, matte black jacket embedded with signal dampeners and lightweight carbon weave gloves, he activated the core device wrapped around his wrist. A soft pulse vibrated under his skin. Echo Ghost was live. In his left eye, the modified contact lens lit up with streams of data. Every sensor, every surveillance node in the vicinity was being intercepted, rerouted, or fed false information. To the city's digital systems, Ethan no longer existed. He rappelled down the building's maintenance shaft with practiced ease, slipping through a blind spot in the security camera grid, a blind spot he had carefully created during his 2-week stint as a janitorial intern. By the time his boots touched the service alley beside the bank, he was already in sync with the system's internal clock. He had exactly 7 minutes before the night guard did his next circuit. Ethan entered through a maintenance door using a forged ID badge encoded with an administrator's access key. The hallway beyond was lined with motion sensors, pressure-sensitive flooring, and facial recognition cameras, none of which registered his presence. Echo Ghost wasn't just hiding him, it was replacing his trace with the shadow of someone else entirely. He moved swiftly and silently through the maze of corridors, down 2 levels, and into the secure wing of the bank. There, past an armored door and an electromagnetic lock, was the heart of the fortress, the biometric vault. The vault door was a gleaming titanium oval guarded by a multilayered identity scan, retinal, voice, heartbeat, and pulse pattern, all cross-verified against a quantum token stored in a split server. Most systems this advanced were believed to be immune to forgery. But Ethan had done his homework. He had spent weeks collecting microscopic data from the real vault supervisor, fingerprints from coffee mugs, voice patterns from conversation snippets, and a discarded tissue for DNA extraction. With a flexible polymer mask molded to match the supervisor's face, a heartbeat emulator strapped to his chest, and Echo Ghost feeding real-time biometric fluctuations to fool the system, Ethan became a near-perfect replica. He stood before the vault, the mask clinging to his face like skin. A green beam scanned his eyes. "Identity confirmed," the system replied. Then came the heartbeat sync. Ethan held still as the emulator pulsed beneath his jacket. "Pulse match confirmed." A soft chime, then a deep mechanical click. The vault door slid open with a hiss of pressurized air. Inside, the The room glowed with low blue lights, and rows of secured data cores shimmered within the titanium walls. The bank didn't store cash here. It stored encrypted digital assets, crypto wallets, and off-the-books corporate secrets worth hundreds of millions. He approached the central console, inserted a forged uplink key, and activated the silent transfer protocol. Within seconds, files began to decrypt. Wallets opened. Transfer pathways lit up on his lens display. Ethan directed the flows into hundreds of scattered accounts, burner wallets created using temporary IDs across dozens of countries. He wasn't greedy, he was methodical. Small enough amounts to avoid triggering emergency protocols, yet large enough to make a fortune. Everything was working perfectly, until it wasn't. Midway through the transfer, his lens glitched. A warning flashed. Trace detected. Echo Ghost compromised. His breath caught. That wasn't possible. The system wasn't connected to any global network. It was supposed to be undetectable. Yet someone, somewhere, had pierced through its defenses. A high-frequency interference pulse suddenly flooded the vault. The uplink fried, crackling with sparks. Ethan yanked it free just in time, the smell of melted circuits burning his nostrils. On his wrist, Echo Ghost vibrated violently, then dimmed. His invisibility was crumbling. He bolted. Out of the vault, through the secondary exit, the old cargo tunnel he had discovered during his initial recon. It hadn't been used in years, but he'd cleared it and mapped it precisely for this moment. He raced through the narrow corridor, heart pounding, Echo Ghost flickering in and out as emergency lighting bathed the tunnel in flashes of red. He emerged 3 blocks away, ducking into an alley behind an old movie theater. His body trembled as adrenaline surged through him. In his backpack, the encrypted drive was still safe. The funds, over $90 million, had already landed in offshore wallets. It was over. He had done it. He had stolen from the most secure bank in the country without leaving a trace. Or so he thought. Back in his apartment an hour later, he triple-locked the door and shut all the blinds. No news alert. No police chatter. Nothing online about the breach. It was silent. Eerily silent. And that made him uneasy. He checked all his devices for backdoors or trackers. Nothing. He activated Echo Ghost's self-destruct protocol, burning the software to oblivion. Only fragments would remain, useless, unreadable. He leaned back in his chair, finally allowing himself a smile. It had worked. But then he saw it. An envelope, slipped under his door, completely silent. He hadn't heard footsteps. No knock. Heart racing, he picked it up. Inside was a single photograph. It showed him, Ethan, inside the vault. The angle was perfect, crisp, and clean. But that was impossible. Echo Ghost had blocked every camera. No system should have captured this. Beneath the photo was a printed line of text. You're not the only one who found the blueprint. His blood ran cold. Somewhere out there, someone else knew. Someone else had access to Echo Ghost, or worse, had upgraded it. Ethan had thought he was the only ghost in the machine. He was wrong. And he had just woken up a war that had been buried for 20 years.